Okay, let's see. This is Dawson Gage, and I'm making this video from the kitchen, my wonderful kitchen, my home base. This is where Dawson Gage, the homemaker poet, does his thing. And so I'm sitting here making, as Mayor Bill Sappho might say, a very late dinner. It's about 4 in the morning, and yesterday was one of the most remarkable days in the history of Wilmington, and therefore in the history of the world. I'm making this video in response to the, should I go ahead and say, yes, the psychopathic lawyer weasel and white supremacist menace to society, who is William Joseph Boney Jr., who dwells, at least during the daytimes on the weekdays, on some occasions when he's not, elsewhere. No one can actually say what true path and pattern through this city over time is proper to that personal jurisdiction, which is William Joseph Boney Jr. But rest assured that yesterday I was able to confront this man in a properly philosophical as well as rhetorical as well as political fashion. And so I'm making this video as I look out the window, because you see, Mr. Boney was able to say, to make very disparaging, mocking comments about my effort here at 513 and 515 Orange Street in the city of Wilmington, in the county of New Hanover, in the state of North Carolina, in the country which used to be the United States of America, but which nowadays is something unrecognizable. Mr. Boney seems to think that the law, because he mocked my idea of having an Orange Street Law School. And this video right here is but a small gesture, a tiny step, but a necessary response to this violence, to this insanity, and to this concrete manifestation of white supremacy in Wilmington. So this is a diss on William Joseph Boney Jr., the lying lawyer who lives during the daytime. Like I say, those of us who actually appreciate the law know that capitalist ideas about the division of labor within society and the division of time within the day and between and among persons, the actual reality of society. And let's begin by saying that whatever the law is, the law must be in accord with what scientists and the philosophers such as Wittgenstein would call the laws of nature. When Wittgenstein uses the word law, I don't even know what the German word is, but let me begin by saying that the proof is in the practice, and that practice is the only proper standard for judging what is lawful and what is not. You can speculate as to what is lawful, but then the only way to truly practice law is to do something which is lawful, as opposed to that which is not. For in this town, in this city, and in the jurisdiction of these United States, we have this idea of a pure, of an undiluted, of a rightful, and therefore blessed and consecrated government. You see, we say in our country, in the United States, or we have for some time, and it's worth pointing out that we did not used to necessarily say this. Like, this is a relatively recent phenomenon. In fact, it corresponds to the period of American Empire. So in this country, in the United States, and you see this reflected in the pretensions and conceits of the legal profession. In this country, we say that our criminal laws are objective, that they're based, if not scientific, if not philosophical, if not grounded in a true religion, that nevertheless our criminal laws are not persecutory, are not politicized, are not the reflection of narrow interests within the governing class. They're not the result of arbitrary will or fiat of a dictator or a king. Because we say we have a republican form of government, or a representative form of government, or a democratic form of government, or some mixture or conciliation of these different principles, we say that whatever it is we have here, it is pretty much good. It may not be perfect, but it's good. And when we say that the government is good and that our laws are just, more or less, the injustice is there, it's true, but the injustice is sort of, is the minor part, and the justice and the goodness is the major part. And so therefore any criticism of the law, any scholarship, any inquiry, any pleading in the court proceeding, any statement in society, in the court of public opinion, in the fourth estate, in the realm of journalism, in the realm of poetry, in the written word, in the public sphere, in the spoken word, in the circulatory space of society. That at any of these levels, everybody acts with a certain notion of the law. Okay? And one cannot disentangle the law from the concrete reality of our actual society. So while people in so-called law schools, or people sitting in law offices, so-called, like 406 Market Street and 408 Market Street, where these two tandem lying lawyers, these two generational, these sort of generational outgrowths of the legal profession of an older time, they say that the way that whatever it is that has been passed down through their family line, that whatever it is that is carried along with their powers of attorney and their bank accounts and their real property and their various features and their features and God damn it, the likes of Bill Boney and Oliver Carter say that what they do and what their families have done before them, passed unto them, that is the law. But what I do here at 513 and 515 Orange Street is not. As if I did not myself have ancestors or predecessors. Let's just do this real quick. Not everybody needs to stage their identity with reference to what their predecessors or ancestors did. Human life is multifarious. It's just as good an idea in the right circumstances to invent a nom de guerre and head off into the world and do something completely untethered from the place where you're born, the story in which you began. You can throw away your ancestry, you can ditch your predecessors and begin anew in this world, in this modern world, if it still should be called modern. But you can also look back retrospectively, retroactively, you can also reflect, you can also contemplate the story which led to your own life, which preceded your own life, but indeed is inseparable from your own life. For we, human beings, if we want to think about it and take note of it, are an issue. You see, issue is this word about the concept, but also the material thing, whatever you want to call it, the being which emerges from one human being to another in the process of procreation, generation. And so the idea that there is such a thing as generational development, the idea that there is a process, an evolutionary process that goes from one generation to another through time, and that it's stable and that it's meaningful, and so according to this idea of the law, while everybody else in Wilmington has to change, everyone else has to adapt. Like the people who work, the people who work for subsistence money, for subsistence wages, people who work on an informal basis, the people who are subject to the electronic ankle monitoring, who still have to work at minimum wage, or bare subsistence jobs, the employment situation to address something which 50C plaintiff and purported victim witness Isabel Shepard, positioned down at 606 South 4th Street. The law is a landscape, the law is a map, the law is a theater, and the law is a diagram. And here in downtown Wilmington, the law has been altered and the law has been inverted a number of times in the history of the city. And these inversions kind of all are strung together through the heart of events, through the central sort of tunnel, the central path through history, which is otherwise known into Hegelian philosophy as the movement of the world spirit. The movement of the world spirit is in Wilmington. And so the idea that the law is what Mr. Boney says it is, having acquired a certain set of skills and a certain set of references at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill School of Law, the first so-called school of law founded in the jurisdiction of the state of North Carolina. But today with Mr. Boney, you see all let's use an example from the Harry Potter books, okay? In Harry Potter, which, as I pointed out to Caroline Fryer once upon a time, it has this sort of Marx's Capital. There's a parallel between Karl Marx's book Capital and J.K. Rowling's books, the Harry Potter books, in that they are both framed within the context of England. And you have to think within an exclusively English frame, or you have to anchor your consciousness in England, your frame, your perspectival configuration in England, in order to understand the whole world. And so in Harry Potter, the wizarding world is depicted as seen through English or British, witch and wizard eyes. Okay, so the idea of magic is itself an English magic, which is not altogether strange or unusual here in Wilmington, North Carolina, the port city and the first capital city of this planted, founded, discovered, perhaps even stolen or borrowed or transferred land. This tract upon the earth, this thing which was erected by the mere motion and certain and sure prerogative of the Crown of England, the very first charter document for Carolina, which was not quite specific enough to distinguish the concept from Virginia, but which was, to some extent, a separate southern entity to the south of Virginia, also chartered, also conceptualized across the Atlantic. Here in Wilmington, on the coast, at this pointed area, or this, the geographic word is cape, this corner, this end of the line, or end of the, whatever you want to call the shape that culminates in Cape Fear, at Bald Head Island, that jurisdictional nightmare, or excuse me, escape room. So, what I'm trying to say is that today I was sitting in the courtroom, here, courtroom 302, at the Princess Street Courthouse. I live at 513 Orange Street in downtown Wilmington, North Carolina. The grid, the street grid, we have a regular street grid which aligns with the Cape Fear River. And this street grid is the frame in which you understand the dynamics of this city, and which have a quality to it which is absolutely unique. It's absolutely unique. It's if you understand what the architect Rem Koolhaas said in his book Delirious New York. If you know what Delirious New York is, and you know anything about the 5 boroughs of New York, which in the year 1898, when something also happened, something dramatic, something which has yet to properly, our understanding of the year 1898 in Wilmington is obviously still partial, defective, mistaken. We have so many confused ideas, what we call history, what passes for history, PBS documentary history, David Zucchino book on 1898 in the New York Times, which completely mistells the entire story. Anything other than H. Leon Prather's book, We Have Taken a City, is pretty much a bizarre misunderstanding of the history of our city, and yet such strange Yankee ideas are prevalent here in Wilmington. And so this idea of school, and of law, and of school of law and law school. And it's funny because William Joseph Boney Jr., also known as Bill Boney, whose so-called law office is just a few blocks from here. And at that so-called law office, that nice old wooden building in residential style, but well refined and well styled in the manner of a law office. It gets everything right. It's picture perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a nice law office. It's the closest law office to the courthouse And as the district attorney and war criminal, or excuse me, the former district attorney, current war criminal, ongoing war criminal, for the rest of time war criminal, because he is a criminal who it will take a war to put to justice. When you are somebody who does not understand the law, or who does, but simply disdains it and tries to violate it, and then does, if you're somebody who does not want to follow the law through some inborn characteristic or through some contingent temptation, whatever it is that makes Ben David do what he does, it is against the law, but nobody is able to do anything about it. And so the man who commands, and who still appears to command, so-called law enforcement, what we call law enforcement in this county, is the execution of orders from the arbitrary command center, which for 19 years emanated from the 5th floor of 316 Princess Street. The idea that Mr. Boney, or any of his co-conspirators, would presume to speak of the law when they themselves are such corrupt, cooperative, collusive, and conspiratorial colleagues of the district attorney's office. Every lawyer in this county, if lawyer is the right word, who practices law for money, they are allowed to do so because of a conditional grant of legitimacy by District Attorney Ben David. The condition, which is which is in practice quite rigorously adhered to. Very few lawyers in this county, or attorneys, members of the so-called bar, very few members of what we call the legal profession, or what was celebrated and invited and blessed and co-opted last night a few short blocks away, 20 North 4th Street, the so-called Harrelson Center, the former jail, the 1970s modernist, brutalist building. Quote Isabel Shepard, who dwelled and worked, if that is the right word, work, for her was working with other people to make their work possible, working to get other people to get jobs. Her job was to give other people jobs, or to help other people get jobs, although the jobs themselves were funded by philanthropic entities which somehow mysteriously injected cash into the private sector economy in this county, basically saying to various companies, go if you employ, by which we mean abduct and turn into forced labor. If by employ we mean human trafficking under a respectable, corporate auspices, if you have an artificial person or corporation registered with the Secretary of State in Raleigh, and you have a certain amount of money, and if you pledge allegiance to the capitalist system and the return on profit, and if you make pleasant and agreeable and fawning noises about such things as Live Oak Bank or Encina. Back in 2019, if we can speak to the law, because there are many things in this county and city which you might call open defiances of the law, temples of lawlessness, fortresses of law breaking, insurrectionary pockets, or great big tent revivals of law breaking and of lawlessness and of conspiracy. The definition of conspiracy, a simple one, is if people breaking the law together. Okay? What does it mean to break the law together as opposed to do it individually? Well, breaking the law together in concert, as it were, as part of some kind of band or team or organization. The word that you use for a conspiracy, because there are many types of conspiracies. A band could be a conspiracy. People who all rove around together. You see? But it's to be distinguished from a riot or a tumult. In that one sort of tumbles out of reality. Tumbles out, it emerges and suddenly happens. It flies like a flash of sparks. It erupts like a volcano. It arrives like an earthquake. It strikes like a tornado. And it flashes not merely felt, but seen like lightning. Interventions of this sort in the law refract and trickle and pass and move and slide through the world, through the universe. You see, jurisdiction is the word for the way that the law consists of words. And so I, yours truly, poet and journalist Dawson Gage, can answer the question, which I was not going to answer in front of a judge or in earshot of armed officers, so-called bailiffs, so-called sheriff's officers, so-called, definitely not peace officers anymore, because as I say, as the great philosopher, English political philosopher Thomas Hobbes says in his book Leviathan, everybody, like political philosophers all over the country and all over the world like to refer to this fact, but nobody has a clear idea of what it means because they did not understand the book Leviathan, or at least very few do. But in Leviathan, Thomas Hobbes says that the state of nature prior to, or in some cases after, or beyond, or outside of the commonwealth, of the nation, which is also a state, which is also a market system, a system of laws, in other words, a jurisdiction. That a jurisdiction consists of words, that it consists of language. Kojin Karatani, my master, my master inspiration, the professor from Japan, who taught in the United States and whose works were available to me and to my friend and co-thinker Matthew Kleinsteiber, and to very few others at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. You see what Mr. Boney and his sad, sick, sinister ilk, the kind of person who he thinks is legitimate and who he thinks went to law school. It's quite ridiculous that this man would sit in a court of law and tease and taunt me about the difference, the semantic difference, the conceptual difference, the stylistic difference. What exactly did he mean when he asked me whether Arm Street Law School is a law school or a school of law? Oh, I mean, I guess that's like asking, is it law rule or rule of law? Is there a difference between law and rules? The problem with Mr. Boney and the problem with his idea of the law, as is said, I guess in England, tackle the ball, not the man. If we were to tackle the ball, not the man, the ball is the idea. The man is the mere organism who can be found in the physical structure not very far from here on daytime, weekday moments when the court is in session. What we call the court that's supposed to be open but is in fact quite closed and on lockdown and under surveillance. This place, jurisdiction, which is jurisdictions plural with an S, is the title of my 5th collection of poems. I chose at about the age of, say, 19, 20, 21. That is when the discourse of psychiatric medicine, and in particular, the so-called psychiatric medical profession and the associated behavioral health professions and in allied sectors, the social organism, the entity, the domain, which is called psychiatry or psychiatric medicine, whatever it is, this idea, this scheme, this system, which connects Bill Boney's hateful, bigoted, and false statements about mental illness in courtroom 302 this afternoon of the 15th of November, yesterday, not this afternoon, yesterday afternoon, Friday, getting towards 3 o'clock in the afternoon, courtroom not 302, it was 301, or whichever you call it. It was the courtroom opposite courtroom 302. We had been in courtroom 302, me and Bill Boney, sitting before an empty bench, waiting for Judge Faison to appear. Judge McKee, the blonde, slender Republican, who Mr. Goolsbee says knows the law, but who, contrary to my own notion, Judge McKee she speaks of Chapter 50B proceedings with great reverence, with great seriousness. She tells people to follow the orders of a 50B, domestic violence protective order, to follow it like it is an order from a general, an order from the central processing unit, an order the way that a slave or a servant or an employee or a child from his parent, or even in the old-fashioned way, a wife from a husband. The idea of an order which you have to follow. The Judge McKee speaks of Chapter 50B proceedings and the orders which issue therefrom as if they were the law. And that was what Mr. Goolsbee must have meant this morning when he walked past me in courtroom 302 and gave me his best wishes for the day's proceedings. My mentor in the law, Mr. Goolsbee, did understand, as he inevitably does, when I am at court and something important is going to happen, it's always a very, very, very serious day. In fact, the day is so serious that nobody around you is necessarily going to be able to do anything to help you when that seriousness becomes not just serious, but dire, dangerous, and immediately, imminently lawful. Why not? Courtroom 302, like I said, Mr. Goolsbee walked past me and told me that Judge McKee would do me right because she, as he says, actually knows the law. He would not have said that about Judge Faison. I guess his name is James Faison. Judge McKee is a white woman and a member of the Republican Party, unless I'm very much mistaken. As I say, she has blonde hair. She is thin. She's she has a certain elegance about her, a certain beauty, I would say. Of course, not everybody would see it that way, but I, from my perspective, do. The law emerges from the eyes. The law, indeed, one cannot even begin to overstate the extent and the degree to which the law emerges from the eyes, because the eyes connect to the mind, which connects to the other parts of the body, and the dialectical dialogue and congress and communion and intercourse of the different parts of the body begins with the phenomenal node and point of action and nexus of reality, which are the eyes. The eyes exist in the law, and the law begins and ends with the eyes. And not only with the eyes, because there are also the ears, there are also the fingers and toes, but there are the eyes. And through the eyes we see each other. We are all in a certain place, and human beings moving through the world. Although the game, or if not even the game, the meta game, the thing which is definitely not a game, the adventure, the story, the narrative, the grand theater, the epic landscape drama, drama, scenario, location, the topos, I guess you would say it, the surface of the planet, Earth. So this place, which is divided up into different shapes and sizes and different places, which have different laws consisting of different words. And yet this man, William Joseph Boney, thinks that it's a meaningful distinction to say. He thinks it's actually worth pointing out that some schools of law, or some law schools, places in the United States where people go and pay many, many thousands of dollars. Many thousands of dollars. Like the precise number of thousands of dollars in our current currency configuration here in the United States. Currency is at issue here. Mr. Boney was asking me about cryptocurrencies. I wonder what the school of law which he went to. I'm not so sure that there is that any of North Carolina's so-called law schools have a good course, a good faculty member who understands cryptocurrencies, or who claims to. The idea of cryptocurrency seems to make a mockery of this idea that you can teach the law at a school, at this accredited, great big, the metaphor of the ivory tower is a bit tired here. What law schools are these strange, insurrectionary, pockets from which the likes of Attorney General-elect Jeff Jackson can stage his invasion of the political system, because people like Mr. Jackson are allowed to make one-man political guerrilla warfare upon the entire society. Mr. Jackson can use the law to wage war against the Republicans. He's allowed to take that same mentality that he used. I speak of the Attorney General-elect because he is somebody with whom I have to deal. I would say that my opinion of Mr. Jeff Jackson, the soon-to-be Attorney General of North Carolina, unless, of course, Jennifer Harjo tells him to step the fuck back and get the fuck out of the way, unless Jennifer Harjo is Attorney General, which would make a much better North Carolina than Jeff fucking Jackson, Mr. Josh Stein Jr. The thing about it is that I took a path to the law. Now, the overpraised Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., Supreme Court Justice, who made a few very wise decisions and who often propounded unusual, not to say completely mistaken, but interesting ideas about the criminal law and about the law. I read Oliver Wendell Holmes' book, The Common Law, and also his article, The Path of the Law, in the Hanover County Detention Facility. And so I was able to see that this supposedly authoritative and canonical and sound source of legal authority, as my attorney James Rainsford in Hillsborough said when he was visiting me at the Orange County Detention Center. He said, we were talking about Oliver Wendell Holmes, and James Rainsford said he was a great dissenter. But to me, as a communist who believes in the freedom of speech, the record of Oliver Wendell Holmes is more properly seen as a series of rulings. You wouldn't even call it dissent, because it was dissent against dissent. It was, whatever. It doesn't really matter when you're speaking of communism, or proto-communism, or germinal communism within the United States. When you're talking about communism, the law doesn't really make this distinction between dissent and affirmation. The majority might sometimes rule in favor of an individual, specific communist person, communist cause, communist, nonviolent uprising within civil society, within the law. A place like 513 and 515 Arms Street, where it's possible not to stage an uprising within the law and to use the law, not to claim to know it, but to actually know it and to prove it by doing it, which is to say by doing that which is lawful, in the main index and in manifestation of this idea of practicing law by actually doing something, as opposed to sitting in an office and taking people's money in order to do things for people that they cannot and would not have thought of doing for them to do and doing for themselves. The idea that law is what Oliver Carter offered me, Oliver Carter III, son of James Oliver Carter, daddy son, daddy baby, whatever you want to call it, daddy diddly, like no good, absolute, degraded, degenerated, lawyer weasel. People, there is a certain phenomenon of degeneration among a certain kind of bourgeois, upper bourgeois, post-aristocratic, sub-aristocratic, whatever you want to call this thing. The law exists not only in our words, but in our bodies. Because you can see by looking at a person, physiognomy used to be the word, physiognomy and the apprehension of stock, or of race, or of body, or of gene. We can look to individuals, we can look within families, we can look and try to make distinctions about certain races. I myself shy away from such distinctions, although they do exist. People don't interpret them in any certain way, but the idea of race is a real one. It's just not one which we should necessarily seize upon as the crucial or organizing or determinative idea. The law is not made only of words, which can be taught anywhere, just as every mother teaches her son or daughter how to read and write by speaking to them in whatever language happens to obtain and to exist between the mother and the child. That language emerges, as the great Noam Chomsky, who has said at this moment, to have lost the power of speech and writing. It is said that at age 95, Noam Chomsky no longer speaks or writes, but his words and his thoughts still do persist. And so Noam Chomsky says that human beings are distinguished from other forms of life and other animals by our possession of the power of language, the concept of language, even, which is to say what he calls the universal grammar in every person's mind, which must coincide with or emerge from or belong to a person's body. Every person, every human organism, every human being that is born has the same universal grammar. The universal grammar inhabits our minds, and it's the thing that makes it possible for a child, for a baby, for a young human being to hear the language of the parents or of the people around them, and from the most impoverished data. This is the theory known as the poverty of the stimulus. I dare say that Mr. Boney and his lawyer gang, Mr. Boney, against whom I waged this polemic, and who I will give a certain backhanded compliment. He is not a stupid man; he's just a wicked one, and wickedness has a way of distorting and corrupting ideas such that people who have genuine intellectual power or a certain authentic learning, nevertheless, exhibit the most pathological and unstable and corrosive and dangerous thinking. Just because you're smart doesn't mean you're good. Goodness and knowledge united and inseparable is the ethos and the moral and the outlook and attitude which was taught at my high school, my secondary school. I left New Hanover County to go to high school in Essex County, Massachusetts, in Andover, Massachusetts, a jurisdiction next to Lawrence and Lowell, Massachusetts, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which was once upon a time Massachusetts Bay. In Massachusetts Bay Colony, there arrived at the very, very ground zero origin point. My ancestor, John Gage of Ipswich, arrived at Salem Harbor on the 12th of June, 1630, a Saturday. It is Saturday right now. It's a Saturday in November, the 16th of November, but it is Saturday here in Wilmington, North Carolina. And as I say, the law is made not only of our bodies, but of our words. Between our words, in our bodies, there is a possibility, an infinite possibility, a limitless potential. The idea that the law is ever closed, the idea that the law is ever finished, would seem to be not exactly a fascist idea, but one which tends unto inequality, oppression, control, exploitation. The idea that you can fix the law, that the law is what I say it is and not what you say it is. Today we had a very clear confrontation, the 15th of November, 2024, which for me has been a year of extraordinary achievement. And yet when I walk into courtroom 302, I meet this arrogant, this sad, a man who has reached the age of 70 and claims to have practiced the law for 40 years, but who sits there and has no argument to make whatsoever about the law. His idea, though it is there, is too hideous to articulate, too god-awful to enunciate. It cannot really be spoken properly, as they say in creative writing programs, tell, not show, other way around. Show and tell, kiss and tell, show and kiss. 50B, something's amiss, let's make this poetry to end the diss. I'm going to go ahead and just do this like this. This is a poem I wrote on what was it? The 30th of August, 2024, this year I wrote a poem for a woman in another jurisdiction, okay? 1898, the 5 boroughs of New York were united into New York City. And in Wilmington, the city of Wilmington and the county of New Hanover were taken over by the white supremacists. So the boroughs, 5 of them, became one. Meanwhile, the ship of Theseus the wood was traded out for plastic, or is it aluminum? Whatever it is, the ship of Theseus was redesigned in 1898 in Wilmington, where the police department was substituted away, subtracted, suspended, and replaced with a sequence or a series or a mob of basically criminal street gang members, to use the language of Michael Lee's gang legislation. Michael Lee, the senator, the so-called senator from New Hanover County, who, with this video, I do thoroughly, officially, lawfully, and formally dispel. Because the words, I was getting to this, the way to properly end this is to quote the timeless wisdom, which one cannot refer to enough, really, in the context where the lawyers out there are sitting like so many fat rhetorical targets. For this man, yours truly, Dawson Gage, poet and journalist, who, like a handful of other literary warriors, how do you say, prose poetical vagabond wanderers, whatever you want to call it, the adventurers, the filibustering, trust busting, crop dusting, from the husting, filibustering, trust busting, crop dusting, from the husting, which is what they say in England and sometimes in Iowa for standing, or as we say here, running or standing for election. What is the proper word for trying to get yourself elected to office? Because that's something that the likes of Mr. Boney, who claims to understand the law, has nothing to say about. Because because people like him are part of the same plane as the Democratic Party politicians who have decided, one by one or all in or a few at a time, that I should be kicked out of the city at the point of they don't even have lynching trees anymore. The detention facility is a place, is a thing, is a device, is a tool to torture and destroy human beings. The detention facility here in Hanover County is worth 100 billion lynching trees. It's a lynching tree that goes all the way down to hell and climbs into the sky. What's the book, the fairy tale about the plant that goes into the sky? I forget what it is. Jack and the Beanstalk. Yes, Jack and the Beanstalk. So here in Wilmington, the white supremacist lynching tree is like Jack and the Beanstalk. It's out on Blue Clay Road, Juvenile Center Road. Like, it may not look this way. It may appear to be an angular, bunker-type, one-story building on a flat piece of earth in the northern part of New Hanover County, in the place called Castle Lane, an unincorporated place where I, back in maybe 2017 or so, hallucinated or perceived or was allowed to observe an otherwise hidden phenomenon, the Castle Lane Police Department. That's how I'm going to conclude this discourse, is with a brief evocation of the Castle Lane Police Department. I was on my way up to Alan Walker's house, which between this place on Orange Street and the two pieces of residential property here in downtown Wilmington, to say nothing of the extensive, or in any event, perfectly positioned and unstoppable, whatever you want to call it, Gold Walker, my neighbor, who brought me a typewriter which was shipped here from some place in another jurisdiction not very long ago. The typewriter did not work properly, or was not suitable to my purposes, because the numbers on the typewriter, on the keyboard, the numbers were placed on top of the symbols. So you had to press the shift button to hit the numbers. The symbols were default on the keyboard, which was brought to me by Gold Walker, my neighbor, who's somewhat slightly younger than my own late grandmothers, one of whom told me to study law, and the other of whom gave me this house here, or a third of it, a third which turned into a whole. The law is made of words and made of bodies, but it also has this property known as mathematics. But mathematics should not be understood in terms of natural numbers or Arabic numbers, or the numbers which are plugged into a calculator or exist in a computer program the ones and zeros in a binary code, or the strange number figures, such as you see. How do you say it? Like in HTML or whatever, you can every color in the palette, whatever limited number palette they have on the computer, like 256 color or whatever. Every color has a code, and so the way that you plug the colors into the computer, so that the web page, the piece of digital real estate on the screen, the law is made of bodies and the law is made of words. But our bodies and our words in this day and age, this day, the law exists in time. It's always changing, and it will always change, more or less slowly. But by changing, it also allows us to perceive the way that it is constant. The Castleham Police Department said Ben Schachman from the witness stand, who might have some relation to Max Schachman, who was an associate of the great Lev Davidovich Bronstein, also known as Leon Trotsky. Now, Mr. Bernie says that he said that I, with my idea that real estate is not translatable or automatically quantifiable in terms of money. What I told Mr. Bernie, and I told the court, and I told the world in history, is that I, Dawson Gage, who live at this property, 513 and 515 Orange Street, and who from here have staged a jurisdictional uprising, have staged a legal political resistance, a guerrilla warfare effort in the realm of what is called law, as distinguished from rules, because at war, law is all that there is. There are no rules in war. There's only law. And so, in the war of all against all, which Thomas Hobbes perceived as the state of nature, in a cryptic way, under capitalist conditions, in totalitarian moments, at this point in history, when we have these jurisdictions and systems of written law, and the whole world is an empire of law, with a single interconnected jurisdictional matrix, but that also corporations, people, bank accounts, computer programs, software, pieces of intellectual property, certain figures in the law, like Kaspersky Antivirus, or Live Oak Bank, or Facebook. God damn it, Facebook, of course, is a law unto itself. And people like Mr. Boney have a client like she who must not be named, a client and a clientele, shall we say, who think Facebook.com is the law, when in fact Facebook.com is a website, and I too, Dawson Gage, have a website just like I have a house. And if a man has a mind, it doesn't matter what he lacks. As I said in my poem for Kelly Ward Williams, a poem for a poet and a musician in jail in the holding cell of the Princess Street Courthouse the same day, the 15th of November. That's right, 5 years to the day. 5 years to the day. That's how this works. It's a cycle, just like the 7th of November was the day. The day of victories in the Soviet Union and the day of victories in Spain. The doble victoria that Pablo Neruda saw in his poem, the 7th of November, Day of Victories, Ode to the 7th of November. The book I had, the Pablo Neruda's Odes. My mom sent me that book 9 times to speak of poetry here in Wilmington. Unacknowledged legislators is what we can be. But only by acknowledging ourselves as legislators can poets not be thrown out of the city, as Plato, perhaps jokingly or facetiously recommended. But who are the poets and what is the city? The boundary, the jurisdiction. The law is made of words and the law is made of bodies, and a poet, one simple definition, perhaps the most basic of all, would be a person, a human person, a being, an organism that has a body and has those words and presumes and undertakes to bring these two terms together in a way which harmonizes with the laws of nature and the designs of providence. The thing about it is that lawyers are great and all, but you can't really, but in the rock, paper, scissors, comparative, contrastive, sort of Pokemon, type game, which exists in the law as well as in society, we all have a certain fitness, we all have a certain type, we all have a certain, status and style and identity. And we try to talk about these things, identity, as if it were all fixed and it were all stable, and we could all, or at least some of us, that we all have the luxury and the right and the prerogative and the casual, lazy, scope and permission to just do whatever we want, say whatever we want as individuals. No. We all are not, our identity is not just a word game. It is a word game also, but it's not just a word game. It's not just what the words are, it's what you do with them. And that's why practicing law means taking those words, like Prometheus took fire from the gods. That story might not have ended as it did. There are other ways to take the fire from the gods and to take back the ship of Theseus by realizing that the golden piece which is missing and vanishes is the true way to know that it is the ship of Theseus. That's a little shout out to Caroline Fryer, and to speak of jurisdiction as if another maritime culture, another maritime intermundia, space between worlds, the place where our mayor here in the city of Wilmington, the mayor of Wilmington and the family from which he emerged, the Sappos, came from Greece, which is a Greece, as he tells the story, a Greece under the occupation or the invasive jurisdictional threat. It was apparently the Nazi Third Reich, which drove the Sappho family to emigrate from Greece, the Greece where Lord Byron went to raise revolution, to raise the Greek nation, and where William Cullen Bryant wrote about, let's raise up Greece again, and here I am in the Orange County Jail, sending Pablo Neruda to Kevin Spears and sending William Cullen Bryant to Bill Sappho. And both of them are, for better or worse, if nothing else, and they are something else, but if nothing else, Bill Sappho and Kevin Spears, the mayor of Wilmington, and city councilman, now for 5 years. 5 years to the day is exactly what I'm talking about. 5 years to the day. I was in jail when Devin Scott lost the election by a couple hundred votes and Kevin Spears won the election because I shook his hand at the municipal candidate forum a couple blocks from here over towards Williston Middle School, at that same forum where he who must not be named and she who along with he should not be named, at least not until they are ashamed of the fact that they can't be named, and they themselves are defamed or at least deflated in a world that had not anticipated, but nevertheless refused to have debated. At this debate where Devin Scott was talking to Bill Sappho, this municipal candidate's debate, a couple blocks that way, if you know which way I'm pointing, that right there is west. 2 blocks that way, the gerrymander, the line. We're speaking of jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is not only the scope where the laws are enforced, it's the scope of where the people who make the laws are allowed to live, or are said to live. And so I got gerrymandered across the river without even knowing it, and Bill Boney tells me to speak of the law. He asks, Bill Boney, on behalf of this white supremacist political conspiracy, this secret political society, let's just get down to the basics. The law is not whatever you want it to be. The law is certain category ordering of priorities, such that when you're at war, the laws are not the same. And when you're dealing with traitors, drug dealers don't suddenly seem so bad, or suddenly don't seem so very bad. And when you have legalized open season on fornication, suddenly common prostitutes, as distinguished from prostitutes, common prostitutes being women who take money for sex, and prostitutes generally being women who simply can be induced through whatever means, even persuasion, even virtue inducing sex. What an idea. What is the law in this matter? What exactly did it take for these brain-dead bourgeois males and capitalist tools, and agents and operatives of the Nazi, neo-Nazi, post-Nazi, sub-Nazi? The Nazi Third Reich is very much an issue here, 2 blocks from the place where Marion Timothy Joyner, pierced and studied, freak show assassin, man who makes who makes an unprincipled, demoralized, denatured, but nevertheless predatory and aggressive. This man who makes his so-called bisexual, orientation into a weapon, which people like Carter Jewell are allowed to look at it. They're allowed to speak of it. They say it's the law. This motherfucker, this criminal, this war criminal, this assassin, this absolute, a man who is the opposite of a human being and who is going, whenever he departs this earth, straight to hell, and who in between now and hell will probably, not certainly, the arc of the moral universe is long and it bends towards justice in such a way that you don't necessarily know who is going to prison or when. So I can't say for certain that Bill Boney is going to prison or that Timothy Joyner is going to prison, because both of them, Bill Boney and Timothy Joyner, in the strange constellation Clandestine Social Formation, Article 1, Section 12 says secret political societies are dangerous to the liberties of a free people and shall not be tolerated. And so when Mr. Boney says that my school, Arm Street Law School, which relates to the schools that I went to in this county, Helen Alice Higgins Montessori School, St. Mary Catholic School, just a few blocks this way, my school, my elementary school, the school where I got my start in this world, if you could also count St. James Day School. I went to school in this county, and Mr. Boney tells me that he can speak about school. Okay? He asks if it's a school of law or a law school. He seems to think that you can have law without knowing what school is. And he can't even say whether he's of the new school or the old school, because he, having no love for law and respect or adherence, slavish, mindless, pathetic adherence to a certain rule, a certain idea. And that rule is written by people like him, for people like him. Bill Boney is the white man's white supremacist FUBU. The law is for him, by him. It's for us, by us, says Oliver Carter and Bill Boney when they speak of the law. And so I was the one who was an intern in the DA's office, but Bill Boney thinks that he is on cozy, close, intimate terms with whoever's going to be DA, because the DA to him is somebody who he talks to, and they can perform all kinds of special favors and tasks. Does the law vary between people, or does it protect us equally? Is the Constitution of the United States, with its claim and promise of equal protection, Mr. David said that the statue, the Confederate statue, the Attorney General of the Confederacy, who was from North Carolina, and who was at that time, and for some time thereafter, considered a lawyer, the likes of Ben David say that the man, whose name I don't even know, who had a statue of himself, a great big statue, 2 blocks that way, toward the river. That way is west. Okay? So here I stand like the emperor in the Chinese philosophical, metaphysical, theological scheme of Chinese sovereignty. The Chinese, for thousands of years, have said that the emperor's job, the son of heaven, they say, the Tianzi, that the emperor simply sits in the north and looks south. He faces south, and everything proceeds from that. That the emperor, the king, the son of heaven, with the mandate of heaven, the blessing of historical circumstance, and the close alliance with, or a compact with, not exactly a contract, but a promise and an oath and an affirmation made by the world spirit and the Son of Heaven, from which the mandate of heaven proceeds. There are ideas of the law which come from overseas, just like Charlie Sung, to use his English, Chinese, Anglo-Chinese name. Charlie Sung came ashore here in Wilmington and brought a different idea of sovereignty, but also got one, received one. There was a message received and a message transmitted. There was a code that was broken and a code which was written. There was an envelope which was opened and one which was sealed. Once upon a time in China, Sun Qingling, who swayed the course of world history from a single house, a single residence, Sun Qingling, daughter of Charlie Sung, who came on shore here in Wilmington at the age of 15, having learned English from Boston, from a Boston boat captain. Charlie Sung, a teenage boy, on shore here in Wilmington, a few blocks that way, just around a stone's throw. One can't speak of bombs. You can have typewriters that are called bombs in Wilmington, but you can't really speak of bombs. but bombs have been thrown from time to time in this jurisdiction, in this neighborhood. My neighborhood is in fact a war zone, because just that way, a couple blocks, Alex Manley's press was burned down. And just a couple blocks that way, away from the river, not straight away from the river, it shears through the grid. It's an angle. Here in the grid, Wilmington, the law exists in the lots, in the spaces. And, you know, as I say in my poem, for the murder victim who never received any victim's rights, the right of a victim, whether of murder or of anything else, if victimhood means anything, it's the right to define one's own identity, as the Bolivian Constitution, but not our Constitution, says that one has the right to do. You have the right to define your own identity, or as Boots Riley, the rapper, member of the Coup, Oakland, California, the origin of the flow, 94610, that zip code, far away from 28401, but which transmits directly between these two opposing coastal port cities. When Oakland is under attack, what do? You stand up, fight back. You can't quite say that phrase with Wilmington, because Wilmington has a different number of syllables from Oakland, but they are both jurisdictions. What does Mr. Boney think the law is? The answer has yet to be determined, because a weasel, as distinguished from a man, is not somebody who can be confronted. You can't confront a weasel. Okay? You can confront a man. A man is someone who can be confronted. Men have faces. Faces face front. In Spanish, you say the word frente is the face. The face faces front. But in the Facebook, a face male, black male, U.S. mail, interdiction, conspiracy, which locks me here and allows people to block my Facebook and interdict my mail in the self-same scheme of oppression and violence. A law school like Orange Street Law School here on Orange Street, named for do not know what, the Prince of Orange, William of Orange, the color purple, the red, white, and blue. The green, because colorless green ideas sleep furiously, said Noam Chomsky, and he was quite right. It's time for me to go sleep furiously, because colorful orange ideas stay awake and never go to sleep. The law is taught at a school which does not close 24/7, 365. Go fuck yourself, William Joseph Boney Jr., because Dawson Gage has a law school here. The students and the faculty are not at this moment public information, just like the Supreme Court of the United States said in that case once upon a time in Alabama, said that the NAACP in Alabama is allowed to keep its list of members secret because you don't want the white supremacists knowing who's a member. So that's why Orange Street Law School, at this moment, just like the Free Wilmington Research Group which preceded it, and just like this piece of real estate, real being royal, and royal being sovereign, and sovereign in North Carolina being popular, and popular being another word for communist, and here in the communist liberated territory, which is 515 Orange Street, Wilmington, North Carolina. Where was I going with this? Oh yes, jurisdiction. My law is facts and yours is fiction. So that's my night, that's my day. It's Saturday, and this morning we don't need any cartoons.